Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Wallet Wisdom, a podcast presented by LMCU. If you're new to the show or been listening for a while now, Wallet Wisdom is designed to help break down some of banking's more complex and confusing questions. I'm your host, Brett, and I can't wait to dive into today's episode. Well, Byron, again, thank you so much for joining us on Wallet Wisdom. We're super excited to have you on, and I know it's some exciting times right now for you as well, as we have some exciting news from Detroit, but I'll let you share about that. I don't want to steal that from you. So, Byron, if you could just help our listeners know a little bit more about you and what you do for LMCU.
Great. First of all, thanks for having me on Wallet Wisdom, Brett. My name is Byron Sanders. I am the market leader. We used to call it branch manager, but up until yesterday, now we're called the market leader. And I am housed, I'm stationed, I am leading the downtown Detroit branch, which is on Woodward, right here in Midtown Detroit. And we're excited to be here. We're excited to be in the community. Because this is, we plan for this to be a stalwart branch for LMCU, coming into the Detroit market. We realize that Detroit is a very unique market, and we want to make sure that we're capitalizing on it, making sure that we're partnering with families and with businesses right here in the community.
Yeah, it is, I think, a really fun opportunity, I know, for those in the community to continue to learn more about who we are at LMCU and really how we come around communities and support them, whether that's, how we give back into the communities, how we show up, right, just by being right there as a resource that people can walk in to that branch. So, Byron, super excited for what you get to do over in that area and for those communities. So, Byron, one of the things that we know is coming up this week is it's Money Smart Week, right? And, really thinking about how families can start thinking about finances with their own kids and just how to start maybe having those early conversations with their kids to really understand what savings looks like, how to kind of go about banking in general. So, when we talk about setting kids up for success, what does that really mean, I guess, especially for, families who don't grow up with money, right? How do they start those conversations, and how can we maybe start having those conversations more?
This is a topic that I'm very passionate about. It just so happens that I've got a kid in college, and
Okay.
one of the questions that he just recently asked his mom and I is, I want to learn more about finances. I want to know more about savings and finances in general. And so, of course, me as a financial professional, I'm like, what do you want to know? What do you want to know? Of course, his response was, I want to know everything. And so I think that the ground level, the standard is stability. You in order to build wealth, in order to establish wealth, you have to have stability. You have to have predictability. You know, the old adage of boring is best definitely holds true. And so if you can have predictability and stability, you're on your way to establishing wealth.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and I think so. It's funny you mentioned. So you've got your son in college, and actually, I've mentioned on the podcast a little bit in the past that my daughter is graduating high school this year, and we're in that cycle of
Okay.
college is right on the horizon, and and some of that is the independence starts to grow. There's these seasons in life that I think we all go through, and especially as parents, right? I never really was prepared to be like, oh wow, I have an adult now as a child. That my kid is now an adult, and how am I showing up for them? So I guess what do you see? I guess for parents that are worried, and what would you say to parents who are kind of worrying about their kids' future, their financial future, and what parents can kind of start to maybe rethink about when it comes to talking to their kids about finance?
Well, I think as a parent of multiple teenagers, one of the things that I can definitely relate to is the fact that seasons change, and they
Yeah.
change very fast. You know, it's like one day they're you can hold them in your arms, and the next day they're graduating from high school
Yeah.
and off to college. I think that one of the things that, just speaking from experience and personal experience, one of the things that's always in the back of your mind and maybe on the forefront of your mind are just rising costs, education, the cost of education, cost of childcare. And so those things I would say are normal, but you want to make sure that you start planning as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It's always important to have a plan. In order to tackle anything in your life, you're going to need a plan. Get a good plan together
Yeah.
that has some measurable milestones. You always have to have measurable milestones, and that's a good starting point.
For sure. And I'm sure some of that too is kind of creating those small wins along the way. Cause,
Absolutely.
I think about, for families that maybe are feeling like I'm just way too behind, in finances, or I'm falling behind. Uh, how can we kind of come around those families and help them understand where progress is still happening so that it's maybe less of a feeling of discouragement, but more of this feeling of empowerment and encouragement, knowing while they maybe we're not there yet, the steps we're taking, small as they may be, that's progress. Can you help maybe shape or tell me how you would maybe explain that to a family as well?
Absolutely. One of the things that I like about LMCU is we have a broad array of not only accounts but just ways to help individuals, ways to help families, such as being able to help families open up child accounts or accounts
Yeah.
for kids. Even small kids, and then being able to help them open up accounts for teens, whether those are teen checking accounts or teen savings accounts. And then not only do we have accounts for the kids, but we have accounts for the parents or grandparents or
Yeah.
caretakers of kids. So we can help. And I would say the biggest thing is you have to start somewhere. And so I look at it as it's farming. We're doing some farming, and when you're doing
Yeah.
farming, although we are very much in an urban setting here, when you're doing some farming, I like the garden. So when
Yeah.
you're doing some farming, or when you're doing putting seeds out, it's springtime. So when you're putting seeds
Yeah.
out, you're starting with seeds, and so you start with seeds and you watch them grow over time, but you have to start somewhere. And so oftentimes
Yeah.
you're starting with a small amount or with a small action, but it's just repetition and taking care of what you start with. But we cannot and we should not despise the small things, because those small things can grow over time, and if you are faithful to them and if you're cultivating.
Yeah, I love that. I think about I remember reading a while ago that in some of the forests that exist on our planet. I mean, some of these trees were planted more than 250 years ago, and when you think about somebody planted that seed, but they
Yeah,
never got to see that necessarily that tree grow to full fruition. It's more about the conversation, I think, of legacy and what might be steps you're taking now that you may never see come to full fruition, but it's your future, your family, the legacy that you're leaving for them, that generational kind of
absolutely.
wealth and growth that builds over time. I think when we're talking about this, Byron, for listeners that maybe are not in that space, I think it'd be good for them to understand what does being behind in 2026 look like in real life for some of these families.
Well, I think for many families, being behind looks like those just weekly and monthly bills, right?
Yeah.
The mortgage payment is still due, the rent's still due, the child care, the daycare is still due, the medical bills are coming due, and so you're oftentimes thinking, well, I just can't afford to do it, but I want to have I want to encourage a change in mindset.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the farming or the the seedling analogy. Put some seeds in the ground. Put some
Yeah.
seeds in the ground. Start small. Don't be afraid to start small. It's not an all or nothing situation. Start small. If it's $10, if it's $10 a month, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's you start somewhere because that $10 a month will gain traction over time. That
For
$10 a
sure.
month will gain traction over time. Also, we have to be sure that the old adage of "it takes a village" does ring true. So instead of grandma and grandpa getting a toy that is going to go unused and unplayed with after 3 months, or
Right.
clothes, we all know, especially when kids are younger, clothes only last about 3 or 4 months, and
No
then
kidding.
they
They grow
outgrow
so
them.
fast.
Yeah, instead of them getting a closet full of clothes that are going to go unused in the next 3 or 4 months, put that money towards uh, the child's future. Put it
Yeah,
towards their child's
absolutely.
future, and that those seeds again can grow over time.
Yeah.
If it's 5 years, 10 years.
So, I've been hearing a little bit about this program, a 529 plan. And to be fair, I'm not as familiar with that. I'd love to learn more if you could share a little bit with our listeners and I.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to talk about 529. 529s are ways for families to save for, again, it's a vehicle to save for their child's future. In particular, it's saving for their future education costs. And so
Okay.
it gives an opportunity to take advantage of time, which of course, uh, which
Yeah.
our youth, they have time,
They have,
especially
yeah,
especially those younger kids, those elementary and pre-elementary kids. You have time, and so it gives a chance for families to take advantage of that time, invest the money, and allow it to grow over the next 10, 15 years. So yeah,
that's incredible.
absolutely.
So I've heard of other plans that can do sort of some of those same things. Where you're putting it in like a Roth IRA or some of these other types of things, education programs. Now, is the 529 plan, is that tied or tethered to anything with their education as well? Or is this truly, like you're saying, it's that vehicle that can help to save for their future?
Yeah, the 529 is dedicated specifically for education costs. It's dedicated
Okay.
specifically for education costs. So just like an IRA or a 401k is dedicated for retirement costs, it's for dedicated for those after the age of 59 and a half. This is dedicated specifically for your child, your grandchild, that child in your life that you're close with. It's dedicated for their education, their future education costs. So it's a vehicle that allows you to put money into it. How it allows it to grow over time through investment, and then once the time comes for education costs, such as college, such as technical training schools, things of that sort, they're able to use those funds that have grown over the last 10, 15 years, uh, 5 years as well, to for those future education costs.
Wow, that's really cool. I'll be honest. For me, when my kids were a lot younger, I of course I learned a little bit more as they were getting into their middle school years. But one of the things that I kind of had was this thought that education savings is really for people that just have extra money that they're looking to save. But I think that's become more of a debunked kind of myth, and I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
It absolutely is. The education savings is for all families. It's for all families. Again, you have to have a plan. It's not going to just come together just out of happenstance. So it's all about planning. So you
Yeah.
get a plan together. You talk with your certified financial planner. and we've got financial planners here at LMCU that can help folks with that. But
Sure.
you get with them, and it's all about planning. Again, uh, you don't have to have it all together today, but you talk with your family, you talk with your friends who are already invested in your child's future, and you put things together over time. If
Yeah,
this is slow and steady wins the race, So
for sure.
it's the same thing for here. Slow and steady wins the race, and so you put when you have an extra $10, throw it in the account.
Yeah,
It's not just for those who've got an extra $10,000, because that $10 can grow into $10,000 with
for
time and
sure.
proper investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's I know for me the hard thing to wrap my head around is, especially when you've got young babies at home or anything like that, is the future seems so far away and you feel like there's so much time, and there is, but you can take that for granted. I know I have before, where you don't realize, oh my gosh, next thing you know, they're 18 years old, right? It goes so quickly. And like you said earlier, this is where there's so much time and space for them to be able to really start earning, putting money away for their education and for their future. There's just so much more time for that compounding interest and so many of those benefits to really take hold. I know, I guess thinking about the future can again be a bit of a difficult thing. And how can parents maybe start having those conversations with their kids now about the future, especially around finances, but without putting a burden on the kids as well, because they're still kids, they're still youth, they deserve to enjoy the youth before they have to worry about bills and everything in adulthood, right? But how can parents maybe start having those conversations earlier with their kids?
I think it's important that those conversations start as soon as possible. Let me first of all say that
Yeah.
you don't wait until your kids in senior year of high school to start
Right.
having those conversations. You want to start having those conversations again, planting seeds, but you want to make sure that you're presenting them as opportunities, not
Sure.
obligations.
I like
Education
that.
is not the correct route. College is not the correct route for every child. You have trade schools, you have military. There's so many different options, but you want to present them as options and opportunities, not obligations. So
Yeah.
I think that's
I
the
like that
first and
a lot.
foremost. Yeah,
For
options and
sure.
there's a difference between options and obligations. And so education is not the correct route for every child. But make sure you give them all their options. Show them all their options. Hey, if you go this route, this could be how things end up. If you go this route, this could be how things end up. So show them their different options and allow them to choose, because that allows them to to create their own legacy, to create their own way in life, instead of,
Yeah.
well, this is what mom and dad told me to do. And
Right.
let me say this: I think that when that's often how uh, kids get into college, and they end up switching their major multiple times because they get into college and then they start figuring out. Whereas if
Right.
they go into college with a plan, again, it comes back to that plan
A
again. When they
plan.
go into
Yeah.
college with a plan, they've already got things. Not that they have to have everything figured out, but they know in general the path that they plan on going.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And I guess, Byron, I also am curious for those parents that are listening, are there some resources or, some ways, or, even just those early steps of, like, I don't know. Again, resources are what come to my mind for parents to be able to kind of start talking to their kids more about that. I don't know if there's anything that parents might have the ability to download, or websites or anything like that.
There certainly are a lot of resources. One of the resources that's getting a lot of buzz lately is called the Trump account. It's something that's introduced by President Donald Trump in his administration. Of course, that's the 530A account, and it's just a
Okay.
new. It's a newer savings option. Again, for it's designated for children, and just to help get an early financial start. It does include a one-time federal contribution for eligible children, and it's intended to again to help families get a start on saving for their children. That's this is just another resource, and it's in order to complement things such as the 529. So it's not intended to replace, but it's intended to complement. What I like about it is that federal contribution that families get to make in order for to save for their kids' future.
Sure. So when you say a federal contribution, is that something then that the parent wouldn't have to contribute to the government for that program?
Absolutely, the government is contributing on behalf of the family towards this child's future. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, they're giving a certain amount of money, and it's of course based on taxes and income and things of that sort. But it's
Okay.
something I would definitely recommend looking into. Again, talk with your financial planner, your financial advisor about things of this sort
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
this is very new, and so the the things are changing and they're changing really fast. So I don't want to give too much information because by the
Yeah.
time by the time this gets out, it may have changed already. So talk with a financial advisor, financial planner, and they can keep you up to date on things like
Byron, are there additional resources that parents might also be able to look into? Again, the 529 plan has a lot of benefits, and so I want to just put it all out there for any listeners and parents that are kind of thinking about what's the next move and what moves are the right moves. So, yeah, are there other
that.
resources?
There is an exciting new resource for 2026, uh, sometimes referred to as the Trump account. Technically, it's called the 530A. And what that is, it allows parents, grandparents, custodians to make a $5,000 per year contribution to
Wow.
this account type. And what's so great about it is that the federal government will then add an extra $1,000 with the up to $5,000 that has been
Wow.
made. So it's a great account. Here's the kicker for the 538 for the 530A account.
Yeah.
It is not tied to education
Okay.
unlike the 529. This is not tied to education. So this is just a savings that is for again your child's future, and that's the great thing about it. Again,
No kidding.
this is allowing you to plant some seeds for your child's future.
No doubt. And I think that's what is kind of nice about that is not everybody is on the same trajectory of college. Not everyone's on the same kind of approach as everyone else. And so sometimes when things get a little tied into education, that can sometimes be difficult to be able to cash in, if you will, or and when that becomes available to that student. But having an option like this, it does, like you said, you could start planting seeds a lot earlier where, maybe it's they can maybe put a down payment on their first home through that savings because it's linked
Absolutely.
to that. So, and we know that can build huge wealth for the future, having equity and owning that home as well. It can be really strong. It's a really great tool for those parents that are looking to, have another option that exists out there. So
Yeah.
now, on the flip side of things, there are a lot of costs that come in, and so from a parent side of things, and I guess why do childcare costs sometimes just feel so overwhelming to parents?
Again, as a parent, I think that child care costs feel overwhelming sometimes because because of the rising cost of living. all right, the rising cost of living. But here's the good thing. There is a silver lining. Oftentimes, we have certain benefits that many are not taking advantage of at work, such as health savings accounts and flexible savings accounts. I would encourage every parent, every grandparent who can to take advantage of benefits such as health savings accounts and flexible savings accounts. Flexible savings accounts, oftentimes there are child care, there's a child care advantage. The advantage of using a flexible savings account to pay for or to offset child care is that this is pre-tax money that you are spending instead of post-tax money, meaning
Sure.
that you're getting sometimes up to 25%, maybe even 30%, maybe even a 30% savings, because this is money that is
Wow.
not being taxed. So you're able to spend it before taxes. So kind of similar to a traditional IRA. You're able to get the tax savings and spend
Yeah.
that money. So your money is able to go a lot further. And then for the health savings account, we all know that kids sometimes get bumps and bruises. Of course, in order to stay healthy, you need to go to the doctor every now and then. Again, you're able to use that money pre-tax. You're able to use pre-tax dollars instead of post-tax dollars for those expenditures.
And again, like you said, that's such a huge advantage to not have that money being taxed, to be able to use that in such a way. And I think that's a great point, Byron. There are a lot of resources that I know, even when I was younger in my career, didn't always understand, didn't fully take advantage of. And so, again, for listeners, this is the time. Like, talk to your HR reps at your work. Learn more about it. If you want to learn more about even just what savings accounts are available to you, that's where you can stop into an LMCU, learn a little bit more about what is available for you, as well as, again, talking to your employer about those. Don't leave money on the table if you can get that money. That is so crucial in today's kind of world. Every dollar counts, right?
Every dollar counts. Here at LMCU, we have an HSA, health savings account, and we can help you open up an HSA, and that is critical. And if
Yeah,
your employer does any type of matching, any type of contributions to your health savings account, open up a health savings account, and it will save you and your family a lot of money, because they're essentially saying we're investing in your health and we're going to give you money to make sure that you are able to pay for health care and healthcare related items
sure, sure.
or
Yeah.
services.
No kidding. Well, and I'm glad you brought up healthcare too, because and it may not be relevant to all of our listeners that are tuning in, especially those that might be from Florida, but I know Michigan has a focus now on what they're calling like RX Kids. And it's a program that is kind of helping to support our kids in their health. Can you share a little more about that? Because I'll be honest, I'm not real familiar with that myself.
I'm excited about the RX Kids. We Detroit has a new mayor, Mayor Mary Sheffield, and she's been a proponent of this since day one of coming into office. Uh, RX Kids is to support families during pregnancy and early childhood, and it goes back to that stability that we were talking about. What it does is it gives money, it gives resources to these families to make sure that we put our kids on the best path that we can by providing stability. In order to be the healthiest, you have to be as stress free as possible. And so this is money going back into the pockets of families, prescription drugs being provided for families. And so we want to make sure that we are getting the word out for our partners in Detroit.
Yeah.
We're here in Detroit, and we're rooted in Detroit. We're going to make sure that we are not just in the city, but a part of the city, being good corporate neighbors. And so
Yeah.
it behooves us to make sure that, hey, our if we have any pregnant members, pregnant families, early families with young children, hey, are you taking advantage of this? And because it's for all of Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that, to your point, stability early on is so crucial for the long-term successes as well. Finding that early year, and especially in those early years where things are already very unstable. Your sleeping hours are all different because you're up with the
Yeah,
baby and you got diapers and you got daycare and you got all this stuff. But having some early stability, I think, it really allows for a stronger foundation to build on, over the years. Um,
absolutely.
when families feel overwhelmed, I guess what are some small steps that they can do to kind of either work towards getting help or, moving past that, right? Raising your hand, coming into a branch, talking to a real person. Um, and I might throw that in there too when we're just chatting. So, um, awesome. So good. I will transition us that. So when families, I guess, are starting to feel overwhelmed because there's so much that's going on between the diapers and getting up and all of that, I guess, how do families start to, I guess, take those first few steps to find a little bit more of that stability and really to kind of work through some of that overwhelming financial burden?
Well, I think first of all, Brett, I think it goes back again to having a plan, establishing a plan. Get a good financial professional. Uh, Here at LMCU, we have teams. We believe that we work best as a team, and so make sure you have a banker. Make sure you have a branch that you can go into, and that they know you and you know them, and you want to get a plan together. You want to get a plan together first and foremost. And then I would say, again, don't despise the small beginnings. Make sure that when you have a plan, start somewhere, start small, and work your way from there.
Yeah. No, I think that's baby steps. While they don't feel like a lot at first, when you stick to that and you stay disciplined to them, I'll tell you, they add up. They add up. It's like the old pennies in a savings bucket. It doesn't seem like a lot, but over time, my goodness, you can walk away with a jar full of $50, $100. And
Yeah.
it's just that the repetitive, consecutive, or consistency of doing those things on your plan. I think that is spot on. So, Byron, as we are wrapping up, one of the last kind of questions that I want to ask you and for listeners to kind of be able to think about is, what message would you want people, especially those that may not have grown up with money, what would you want them to hear?
I would say what matters most is not perfection, but consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Continue to consistently show up for your child and for your family. Continue to make those small steps, because small progress is better than no progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And continue to seek help. Don't be afraid to seek help. Here at LMCU, we pride ourselves on working with what you have and starting from where you are. And so
Yeah.
you don't have to be a millionaire in order to work with us. Some financial institutions, we won't name names, you have to have a certain level before they even want to talk with you.
Yeah.
LMCU is not like that. We want to work with you wherever you are and help you get a plan together and help you get towards your goals.
For sure. For sure. Well, and I look at Detroit and the heart of Detroit and the spirit of Detroit and the grit, the determination. And, really it's how we continue to overcome obstacles that come our way. And, we hope that LMCU is going to be, again, that resource for that community to really thrive and to recognize that I too can be an entrepreneur. I too can thrive financially. It's not just the few people that are driving around in really nice cars in Detroit. It's everyone can thrive. And so I'm excited for what you get to do for us as well in the community, how you're bringing that message forward and just meeting people where they're at, Byron. And so very excited for all that's to come over in Detroit and for your branch. And we can't wait to have you back on to share a little bit more about those successes as well.
Thank you, Brett. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. This is a perfect spot for LMCU. We're in the community. We're excited to make contributions to the community and partner with families and businesses, help people achieve their dreams.
For sure. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us on Wallet Wisdom, and we will see you on the next one.
Okay, see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. If you've got questions or ideas for future podcast episodes, be sure to drop them in the comments below. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and ringing that bell to stay up to date on future episodes on YouTube. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.